They're up first. Welcome to This Week to both of you. And Congresswoman Jayapal, let me begin with you. I want to start by, as you know, President Trump has been hitting back on Twitter on the Mueller investigation again, and he also had this to say about Democrats.
Anything we give them will never be enough. We could give them, it's a 400-page report, right? We could give them 800 pages, and it wouldn't be enough. They'll always come back and say it's not enough.
Congresswoman Jayapal, how do you respond to that, and what exactly does Congress need to see?
Well, he should test that theory by releasing the entire report and the underlying information. I think he's not going to do that. It doesn't seem like Barr is going to do that. And I think that there's a real problem with a politically appointed attorney general who seems to have released a 3-page report on the actual Mueller report, the only thing we've seen so far, that now is seeming to not comport with what Mueller and his team actually prepared. So we are very firm, and we authorized, as you know, George, we authorized a subpoena. We haven't used the subpoena yet, but we did authorize a subpoena, multiple subpoenas this last week, so that we can get the full report. I think the main thing here is, what is the president hiding? How do we make sure that we get everything that was produced? We have not seen a Mueller report. We've only seen a Barr report. So we're going to stay firm on this. We're going to push hard. We think there's lots of judicial precedent for us in the past to be able to do this. And that's really, I think that's the main thing, is the majority of the American people want to see the report, and we have to do our job.
There is some precedent for Congress to get some of the grand jury information, the underlying information, of course, that happened in Watergate. But a federal appeals court ruling just this week reinforced that the release has to be part of a judicial proceeding. That means, in effect, that Congress is going to have to open up a formal impeachment inquiry in order to get that grand jury information. Are you willing to do that?
It's not clear that that's what it means. I think that judicial proceeding could mean a number of different things. It doesn't necessarily mean impeachment hearings, but we are going to, I mean, the easiest thing here, and actually Chairman Nadler has asked Attorney General Barr to go to the court with him and say, look, we think that the public interest here is very, very important. We believe that this material should be released to Congress. We understand that not all of it can be released to the public, but we believe it should be released to Congress, because Judiciary Committee, as you know, has jurisdiction over a number of things. And very important to know that we still don't know what was in the Mueller report. We don't know what was in it around conspiracy. And, you know, we know what the president says was in it. And we certainly don't know what the underlying information was that that Special Counsel Mueller felt he could not exonerate the president on obstruction of justice. That's a critically serious charge.
On another front, Michael Cohen, his attorneys this week sent a letter to Democrats on the Judiciary Committee asking you all to support a delay in him serving his prison sentence so he can continue cooperating with your inquiries. It's my understanding that he's already met with committee counsel to work through some of the, I guess, 14 million files returned in by prosecutors. Will committee Democrats support his request to petition for a delay in his reporting to prison?
I don't think we're there at that decision yet. We're evaluating what kind of information may be there. You know, we had put forward 81 requests for information around a whole series of things that the Judiciary Committee has jurisdiction for, much broader than the Mueller report, and that is obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and public corruption. And so some of what Cohen may have may be useful to those inquiries, but we need to get all of our requests for information answered. They have not been yet answered. And then we need to start on the process of subpoenaing some of this information. And in the course of that, we can see whether we think that there's something that Michael Cohen can still offer us that hasn't been provided yet in the underlying information.
Okay, Congresswoman, thanks very much. I want to turn now to the request for President Trump's taxes. Congressman Kildee, let me begin. Thank you for joining us. I want to begin with a letter sent by President Trump's attorneys this week on this request. They sent it to the Treasury Department in order to try to block the release of the president's return. And they write, it would be a gross abuse of power for the majority party to use tax returns as a weapon to attack, harass, and intimidate their political opponents. Once this Pandora's box is opened, the ensuing tit-for-tat will do lasting damage to our nation. Your response?
Well, it's certainly not a Pandora's box. This is legitimate authority that the Congress has This president, by the way, is the least transparent president that we've had in half a century. He's broken precedent by not releasing his tax returns. We wouldn't need to go through this exercise if he had simply done what he had promised to do. But let's be clear. Section 6103 of the tax code grants to the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee the right to order a tax return of a taxpayer in order to inform him and the committee on a subject that we are deliberating over. We are looking very carefully right now as to whether or not the IRS is properly auditing and enforcing tax law on the President of the United States, and we're considering legislative changes toward that end. It is not up to President Trump. It is not up to some lawyer that President Trump hires to determine whether or not this co-equal branch of government has the tools available to it to make the deliberations necessary in order to make policy. This is not an autocracy. The president does not get to decide for himself and for Congress what a legitimate subject of inquiry might be. That's left to the Congress.
The courts may have to decide that. Meantime, the president's attorneys are questioning whether you have a legitimate legislative purpose involved here. They say you're focusing on the audits of the president. They say if that's your real concern, why not request information about audits of previous presidents or simply ask the IRS to come up to the committee and explain the policy?
Mainly because previous presidents in the last half century have released their tax returns, and it would be easy for not just Congress, but any member of the public to take a look at that and make determinations as to whether or not the tax laws of the United States are being properly administered and properly applied to the president. In this case, and particularly in this case, where you have a president that not only has very significant wealth, but made the unusual decision to continue to control that wealth and not to have a blind trust, but actually pass on to his family with his full involvement, the ability to control his wealth. There's a real question, George, as to whether the president's personal financial interests impact his public decision-making. The public has a right to know whether the president's interests are impacting the decisions that he makes using the authority that we have granted him by electing him as president. So this is the unusual situation is not Congress using its authority to gain access legitimately under a very clear statute. The thing that's unusual is that Donald Trump has broken nearly 50 years of tradition by not being transparent with the American people.
Are you worried at all about retaliation? Another section of that same law gives the president the right to ask for the returns of top Democrats.
The president and the Congress have legitimate authority. The question is whether we're using that authority for legitimate purposes. We have a very legitimate public policy question that we are looking at. That's why Chairman Neal has been so careful about this. Now, let's be clear. We're not asking for these returns to be made public. It's not even clear that other members of the committee, myself included, will ever see any of this information. This is specific to Chairman Neal because he needs this information in order to frame the questions that we are trying to answer and the policies that we are trying to potentially enact. But look, anybody who knows Donald Trump should be concerned about his abuse of authority. This wouldn't, if he were to go down this path, it wouldn't be the only example. I can just speak for myself, and I know Chairman Neal. This is a guy, Chairman Neal that is, who has been criticized for being overly cautious in this matter. And I think he's been right on this, by the way. This is a legitimate area of public policy and a legitimate inquiry, and the law is clear. Section 6103 says that he can order the tax return. It should be delivered to him. No lawyer for the president should interfere or direct the IRS or the Treasury Department to ignore the law.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.